So when the red runs out, I'm done? Okay, cool. I was never very good at math, so that visual aid is awesome. Tweet about that while we're talking. I think this is breaking up. It's terrible. Yeah. Oh, here we go. Oh. It feels like there's a loose wire. And maybe if I'm very gentle. Oh. So. Yes. We have a backup microphone if this just really doesn't happen. Okay. I like to wave. I like to wave my hands a lot, and I get crippled when I need to explain something and I have to hold a microphone. But right, I am thrilled. I'm thrilled to be in Poland again. Thank you, Polish people, for having such a great country and such wonderful food. This is my third DrupalCamp Poland, I think. So yes, thanks for having me here. This presentation is the current state of some thinking that we're doing at my company, and my company is called Open Strategy Partners. I can talk a little bit about what we do, but essentially this is sort of a work in progress, and this is a combination of how we think of the work that we are doing, some of the things that we're learning from our own clients, and trying to boil those down into useful lessons to share with you, in the spirit of open source. So I'll tell you just a little bit about who we are, then the title of the talk in terms of culture clashes and some ways not to communicate, and then how to build intentional culture, how to talk about these things that are making the rounds: blameless postmortems, systems to enable mastery and autonomy, fun stuff like that. A little bit about authentic communication, which is the origin story of my work, and how to communicate with empathy, clarity, and trust. I had the great good fortune to be the 18th employee at Acquia. I am no longer at Acquia, and I co-founded Open Strategy Partners with Tracy Evans, who's an MBA with a great deal of business experience from enterprises right through startups, and she brings all of the formal education and actual business experience that where I just kind of got the chance to be part of a fast growth startup and work with hundreds of other companies and learn along the way. And I had the chance to do a lot of communication work, so I had some really strong ideas about how to connect, for example, developers to what you're doing. And I've been in open source a long time, and I really believe in transparency and all that sort of thing. So we came together to work on strategy and communication solutions for technology organizations. We work for open source projects and associations. We work with companies who build open source products. The intersection between all of open source thinking and practice and how to attach that to a business model is what really, really fascinates me. And who of you knows Heather James from the Drupal space? Yeah, so Heather McNamee now, her user number on Drupal.org is about 1,023. Is there anyone in the room whose user number is under 100,000 on Drupal.org? Oh, you don't know? Anyway, hers is 1,000, and she's the first full-time team member, and we've had her on board since January, which is awesome, and we've brought on a second person recently, so things are pretty fun and interesting for us. We basically have this idea that if you communicate authentically and strategically and measurably and so on, if you communicate authentically with people, that builds community, right? And when communities form, communities create value. And this is the experience that we all should be having in open source, right? It should be a familiar story to us that tens of thousands of smart people around the world give each other their best ideas, right? And then we can make businesses, we can create new products, we can do, realize our digital visions today. So we talk about communicate, connect, grow as our mission to help our clients. So we're gonna talk about awesome venture capital funded things a little bit today during this presentation. So this is based on actual real world experience. Imagine that you're at a company that's building an awesome thing, right, in the digital space. And you've got money from some investors, and they're helping you build this out. And you have technical team members, and you have business people, right? So it's really hard to communicate sometimes. Has anyone here worked with venture capital, have worked at a startup or something that's being funded? I know you have. Yeah. So this is a pretty common scenario once you move to Silicon Valley and Berlin startup land and all that sort of thing. But if you haven't been in one of these things, the money makes people a little bit crazy. But basically, who of the not developers, so who of the people who are here who are not technical, how many of you are managers, salespeople, business people? It's cool, you're among friends, it's okay. Okay, now, technical people, well actually, so business people, raise your hands if you've ever had a conversation with a developer where they told you, you needed something from them, and you explained why you needed it, and they explained something back to you that you completely didn't see was relevant in any way to what you just asked them. Yeah. Okay, now, developers. How many times has someone from the business side of the house sold something without asking you if or how you could even deliver it? Oh, that's familiar. Yeah, so now if we all work for a company, right, whether we're building a product or whether we're doing client projects, right, we should all want the same thing, right? We should want our company to succeed by helping our clients succeed, and we want our product to sell, and but when we're under pressure, even though we should, we have a common goal, we should have a common goal, sometimes it's hard to use our words, right, in ways that really help people empathize with our problem and help all of us pull together. All of these roles have different immediate goals. So if we're building a product, right, and we're being helped by someone else's money, there should be a connection between the investors, so VC Vic's an investor, right, and Exec Emma is a manager or a CEO or someone like that, and Developer Dan here, it represents all of the technical roles in the company. All of us have needs and pressures, right? As developers, we want perfection, and we want security, right? And there is no way that the product is ready to ship right now, because there are still at least 30 edge cases that we have to solve for, right? And we have to refactor the API to make it scalable for when we hit, 300,000 customers a month, right? There's no way. Now, we haven't sold it yet, but we have to fix all of that before we can let it go, right? Does that sound familiar? A little bit? Yeah. So, right, now, the executive doesn't know how to build our stuff, okay? But she was smart enough to convince people to give you all money, okay? So she really needs you to do your job and give her this product that everybody thought of, right? So she really needs customers on this thing, okay? So she needs it now, right? And at this early stage, the venture capitalist, they've given you some money, but they actually don't know if it's going to work. They don't know if there's what's called the product market fit, right? Is this a solution looking for a problem, or is this a problem that we're solving and people will spend money to buy it, right? So the investors need to know if you're on track, right? But like sowing doubt and saying, is this thing even ever going to sell? Like, what are you people doing? That doesn't really help, right? And, you know, the executive telling the developers, it doesn't matter, just get customers on, right? And going out and selling before we're done. None of that helps, right? None of that helps at all. This is what's going on in Emma's head. She's feeling a lot of pressure from the investors. The investors are looking at this thing, and it's like, the only measurement I care about is whether there's customers and whether there's money coming in, right? And developer Dan, you know, is going to be coding really late tonight and all weekend again, and that's not going to be great at home, but, you know, we are all pulling together, right? So we've got this common mission, so I have to do my part again, right? Now we also have the marketing department. Dun-dun, marketing, right? And we are over there. We are coming up with the coolest words, figuring out what color scheme the website should be in to convert our site visitors, having a coffee, maybe a cocktail, right? Marketing's pretty cool. I'm not sure if marketing's talking to anyone else at the company, but we've got marketing in the mix too. So, it's hard to build trust here. It's pretty easy to blame everyone else. And when we're using the jargon from our own job, right, to try and explain something to someone with a very different job, it's really hard to communicate to, you know. Emma's like, I already sold it, you just have to build the damn thing, right? And the venture capitalist is saying, you know, you're the boss here, make it happen, and, you know, we are making sense. Like, this is all how we say no, right? But you business guys don't understand that. So, nobody's saying the right thing, and nobody's actually putting themselves in the shoes, and nobody really feels like there's a team, right? So, developer language doesn't really connect very well to delivering business value in this case. And there have been business actions taken without, you know, actually really understanding the technical timelines and so on. So, we're building this product, we're not communicating well, everybody's feeling under pressure, and so the bad outcome that happens in this situation is that the investors are pressuring the executives to sell now. The executives are hard-selling customers, right? God knows what they're promising them, but they're promising stuff, okay? And then the devs deliver whatever's ready at the end of this sprint, and it's faulty, it's buggy, it's incomplete. They have no faith in their executives. They lose motivation. They start working on their resumes, making sure that their, you know, GitHub account looks cool. So, on the right side there, we might start losing technical team members because of this, right? And the executive team at the same time is losing faith in the development team because you guys are supposed to be hot shit rock star ninjas, but you're delivering a shitty product, right? And the clients are unhappy because whatever the executives promised them, it's not doing it, so they're going to leave. The investors pull out their money, right? And everybody goes and looks for a new job. Not so great. Plus, we never got to finish awesome products, right? Like, we never actually got to finish that thing that we used to be excited about. Of course, marketing is having a totally good time. It's cool. Have another cocktail, right? Come up with some more buzzwords. It's cool. Does it ever feel like that? How many people who else is a dedicated marketer in here? Oh, okay. So, how many of you feel that marketing is like, that's what we do? You can tell me. Alright, okay. Alright. Anyway, so, what we need to have here is empathy and clarity, and we need to build trust, right? I need to be able to put myself in your shoes and understand your goals, and the best way to do that, because we're open source people, we know the best way to do that, right, is to be transparent about what's going on. Use our words, talk about our needs, talk about our situation, include everyone in the decision-making process, especially if we're small and agile and building something new, right? Bring in stakeholders from everywhere in the organization to talk the situation through. Maybe the CEO is the person who has the final say, right? But if we're inclusive in our decision-making processes and transparent about our needs, right, and if we work on developing clear, common, accurate language to describe what we do, the value that delivers of it, the importance of it, and so on, about our situation, right, using language to connect rather than divide, then we build up trust, and we can get to a place where things are very, very different, right? So here's an example of why using common language is really important. Right? And there's also, it's important to, I couldn't decide this morning. I was looking at this slide and I was like, there's a really important story here, right? But I'm not sure if it's like that we need to make sure that we share each of our perspectives or something. So I left all these words on here to, does anyone have a strong feeling which of these this actually explains? I'm open to contribution right here, accepting pull requests. Perspective? Yeah. I think probably yes. But then I was also worried that if I say we have to have the same perspective, that kind of undercuts the idea that actually we need to all contribute to, I guess we all need to contribute so that we're not on opposite sides of the road in the end, right? And that we understand where we're coming from. Anyway, this felt important to put in here, and it's cute, and it was online, so, there it is. And we need to do all of that communication, perspective sharing, and so on, to build culture. Culture can happen in our organizations on its own, or we can do it intentionally, and I'm going to talk about doing it intentionally here, because I think it's important. Anyone want to give me a definition of what culture is? And I'm not talking about going to orchestra concerts or the opera or the theater or something, but like at a company, in an open source project, what is culture for you, Chandeep?
So I suppose culture is the way that people have respect for each other, and that thing that brings everyone together, even when there's problems, even when team members aren't delivering or something really terrible happened. Culture is that thing that can allow individuals to get through it all because they've got a common understanding and shared goals and believe in each other as a team, maybe.
That's awesome, right? And on Drupal feels like that on a good day, right? On a good day. But what happens when exactly what you said is actually the mirror image? What if our culture is treating each other really badly, right? And it blows it apart and we fork the project or we leave or we go and get another job, right? It's important that we are mindful that we're about how we do this. I think I've got another click on this slide. Yes. I want to call it, for our purposes today, the way that we think, act, and interact with each other, right? And obviously, we want to do that in a way that's going to pull us together and enable us to help each other better and be there for each other, right? So, anybody know why there's a picture of pancakes there? There's a pretty famous quote that says, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." And I think this is very American, but basically, if you build a culture that encourages good behavior and so on within your organization, the idea of leadership and management and so on today is very, very different from how it was quite recently, right, and our generation, the way we're doing things, people have understood that connection and collaboration produce better results for organizations and for individuals within those organizations. And, it's not, in the best cases, it's not top-down, it's not siloed, it's not exclusionary, and so on, right? So we really need to work on communication, and a really inspiring source for a lot of good practices here is the DevOps movement, right? And the DevOps is a really great example of breaking down silos and using communication to build intentional culture, right? And people are noticing this too, like it's not just us open source weirdos, right? People like the Harvard Business Review are talking about, the culture factor. So cool. I really love this timer. It's awesome. It doesn't matter how smart your strategy is or your technology is super awesome. It doesn't matter if you're not leading people that trust and collaborate with each other. And if you look at it from the team perspective, right, it doesn't matter how cool the awesome, super smart SaaS product is supposed to be if, you don't think that your CEO's got your back and you think that sales department is undercutting you, right? There's no way that you're going to perform at your best in that sort of a situation. So you really, really have to learn to trust and collaborate and communicate properly, right? And then using the empathy and clarity to build trust, like I showed on the slide before, internally, as well as communicating to the world and not selling them hot air, not selling them vaporware, right? It's really, really important to be authentic with each other. And so there's this concept of the blameless culture now, which I find utterly fascinating. The Field Guide to Understanding Human Error is a pretty fascinating book, and it talks about, like, hand in hand with old management structures, there were ideas about problems, ideas about what should happen and how people should react to problems, bugs, errors, faults, and so on, right? And the idea is that people are dumb and do dumb stuff on purpose. And dumb, stupid people should be blamed and should be kicked out. And we should build systems and processes and procedures to stop the dumb people, right? And to punish them. That's not a very caring and sharing way to think about your colleagues, right? In a culture of, oh my God, you force deleted the entire Git repo, and now I'm going to tweet about it while I'm firing you, or something like that. That's not a way to foster, like, trust and collaboration and all these nice things that I was talking about. So the collaborative view of this, what Sidney Dekker calls the new view, if your humans are making errors, right, if there's a problem that stems from human error, it's a symptom that the system within which the human made the mistake has got a deeper problem. And you need to be looking for that. And even more fantastic, and I think this comes up on my next slide, right? So this concept, errors are structural, right? The actions that people take in the moment they made perfect sense to them in that moment, right? Something is on fire, the client side is going down, you're losing money, do this, do that. You're the only person who can know whether, like, how you came to the decision to do that at that time, right? But the only way to judge whether that was the right action or the wrong action, like, did you make things worse or better, is afterwards. So no one can really judge you for the actions that you took. It's not your fault. So what's coming up on the next slide is super cool, right? The people who made the mistake, they're actually the experts in that problem, which is kind of awesome, right? So if you consider every problem as a learning opportunity instead of as an opportunity to blame, it kind of turns things around. So I also super highly recommend the DevOps Handbook. It's a fascinating book. So they talk about the blameless postmortem. You've gone through something terrible. You get everybody in the room who was part of it in any way, and you get anyone else who wants to learn too, right? You reconstruct what happened. You ask individual engineers to talk about what they did, and this is literally the people who, lost your company $100,000 on Tuesday, right? But I don't think you can say that you're celebrating them, right? But you're asking them what happened, and you're asking them to provide details, insights, thoughts about what went on, right? And these are the experts in the problem, right? So as a group, right? Also, so hindsight is 2020. I guess that doesn't really translate very well to Europe. Basically, looking at someone's decisions that they made in the past, you can see perfectly well what consequences it then led to afterwards, right? But in that moment, we don't know, right? So you can't judge. And I think it's also really, really, really important. You figure out the systematic problems that allowed this to happen, and you work on fixing those problems, and you make proposals so that if something similar starts to happen, you can stop it, right? And then you keep records of all of this so that the next time something happens, next time you get a new team member, you're not solving the same problem again. You shouldn't have the same disaster. You can only have new disasters, right? That's very important. And then in these meetings, you're not supposed to say, well, if I were there, I would have done this, or you should have done that, or that could have happened, right? That's judgmental, right? That's saying, you're dumb, right? You got it wrong, and we're not blaming anyone for what happened. So we don't need to make up contrafactual, right, fantasy versions of the world that never actually happened. We don't need to. We need to establish what really, really happened and figure out how we don't do that again, right? So I think it also goes back, I'll jump back a couple slides because I didn't read it out, but the John Allspaw quote is really, really good here, right? The elegantly messy world of human cooperation. Thoughtful critique leads to effective collaboration and better judgment next time, right? I really, 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 really like that. Another element, so we talked about building a blameless culture and one of the techniques to execute on it. Another thing that I think is really, really incredible that goes hand in hand with authentic communication and with the blameless culture is building intentional, systematic cultures that foster the three things that Dan Pink talked about in his TED Talk that motivate humans intrinsically much better than money, much more than money. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So if we're a team and we're communicating well, or if we're an open source software community building Drupal, helping, the world be a better place on a good day, we have a lot of purpose, right? Or we really believe in the software we're building, or we really believe in helping the client with their mission. So purpose can be easier for us in the open source space, but we as actors, as developers, as pieces of the system, we need to develop autonomy and we need to develop mastery, and they kind of go hand in hand. So rather than the traditional management of, I'm telling you what I need, and I'm telling you how to get there, and I'm telling you how to do your job, right, in every single part of the way, I need to be able to have a conversation with you, establish a common goal, and trust you to get there on your own, for example, right? And it's a real contradiction to that old school kind of thinking. And if you want engagement and trust and purpose, empowering someone to do the best job they know how, right? That's a really, really great trust signal, and that autonomy really helps you and them become a team together. To be truly autonomous, you need to have mastery over what you do at the same time, right? So humans have an urge to improve their skills and abilities. I am a performing musician. I still get paid for it occasionally, but essentially it's just become a really, really fancy hobby for me. I used to be a full-time professional, but I still spend hours a week playing my instruments and preparing, for the few concerts that I still play a year. Musical instruments are fun, and it's cool to be able to make nice noise, right? Are there any skaters here, skateboarders? No? right? But do you see those people in town, like practicing and practicing and practicing and practicing until they can do that perfect jump, until they can do that cool thing, right? We're driven by the desire to master activities as humans, right? So it's also just fantastic to learn how to refactor code. It's fantastic to be able to like deeply understand a Drupal module and make it better and give those changes back to the world, right? And all of these skills, right? We acquire a lot of them because we enjoy it, right? I don't think that you all would be developers if you didn't mostly actually really, really enjoy looking at a system, pulling it apart, and then putting it back together better, right? Is that a good way to describe it? You can say no. All right. So now I have a client who is building their company culture intentionally and structurally to enable autonomy and mastery for internal team members and for an open source community, which I think is fabulous. So the company called Drud Tech builds the DDev local development environment. I highly recommend you check it out. We can talk about it afterwards. It's super cool and really, really useful and system agnostic and so on, and it's compatible with Drupal and a lot of other technologies. But they build this thing, and they're building a hosting stack to go with it that's not yet released. This is a completely open source product stack married with a really, really clever set of business models. And as good open source citizens, right, they're contributing, they're sponsoring, they're sharing everything they do as they go. And as much of their activities as possible, right, is happening on GitHub, right, in public repositories. So they're building systems so that, for example, and I guess we'll see a bunch of examples here. I borrowed these slides from Kevin Bridges, and I don't know exactly which order we'll go in, but we'll just click through them now and I'll read them, right? But the thing to look for in this situation is that Kevin and his team are building a system to promote mastery, and automation, it plays a key part. So if we know that a particular style of code snippet in Go is counterproductive, and we learn that it's a problem at some point, right? We put a test into the test suite. If they recognize that pattern, right, that throws a flag, and we know how to refactor that. And once you've done it a couple times, you're not going to write that thing anymore. You're better at writing Go code, and the project is better for it. So the automated system is helping a new team member or a new community member come in and not make any of the mistakes that came before them, right? So this test suite is supporting you to improve your skills. It's really, really beautiful. So they're being very transparent, they're being very open, and they really want to support your autonomy and your ability to get in and do things. So they have a guide, community resources and guidelines for Drud's projects. They have, so this is how you make a request. This is how we expect patches to come in. This is, this is exactly what we do. They're not hiding anything. They want you to be part of the team, and they want to support your autonomy in using this amazing tool, right? They say out loud what their company is. I think it's really nice. They even have a mission and a vision statement, ethical by design, helping people not become obsolete. I think that's also nice. And making the right decision the easiest decision is pretty cool. This is pretty great stuff. They explain exactly how their project structure works in detail, and they also have very, very active and very clever way of using tagging and so on GitHub to support people contributing. Let's see. Oh, and the result of all of this is that they're getting, they're very, very quickly building a real community of contributors who are using the product and who are making it better. So I introduced DDev Drud, and DDev to the Typo 3 CMS community, where I have terrific contacts and friends and so on. And they made DDev compatible with Typo 3. It's also directly compatible with Drupal 6, 7, 8, WordPress, Backdrop, Typo 3. You can run a PHP version that you can throw Symfony and other stuff into. You can run some Java stuff in there. It's super cool. So the Typo 3 community came back and said, hey, if you turn off Xdebug by default when you do the installation, the whole thing runs 6 times faster. Boom. The community made the product run 6 times faster. Super awesome. That community uses a ton of Windows computers, so it got their team working on Windows compatibility really, really, really hard. Now in Drupal land, right, we don't think anybody uses Windows, right? It's all because we're like Linux or Mac users, right? Who's a Windows user here? It's cool. Yeah. See, the thing is, really in Drupal land, we don't think that we're Windows users. They boosted the Windows compatibility so that you can just install this thing on Windows 10 Pro, and they're expanding that downwards in the current sprint, but they made it super easy to use their tool on Windows. By the time we got to DrupalCon Nashville, people came up to us at the booth in Nashville and they said, oh my God, thank you that your tool just works on Windows, because I have a Windows computer and that's fantastic, right? Multiple people came and told us that at DrupalCon. So this idea of expanding the community and getting help by enabling autonomy and mastery really, really works. It's really beautiful. This is an example of testing on different systems. I think we don't need to look at that in detail. So mastery is also helped, and we know this in open source, right? Mastery is helped by sharing. So the more we share our knowledge, the more we share our experiences, good or bad, right? The closer we come to mastery, right? And we've always said, right? Fail faster, fail better, right? So we shouldn't have to worry too much about the blameless part of this thing. Right. Yes. So I have a couple minutes, and I just wanted to address this communication framework that we think about at OSP, because it's very, very close to this other set of things that I've been talking about. We believe that if you use empathy, clarity, and trust to communicate, right? So if you create technically accurate marketing that celebrates your open source contributors, for example, right? You can really, really build trust. Developers don't like marketing, okay? But if we help your day be better, and if we show you a colleague of yours whom you can empathize with, who's solving the problem using our tool, right, that we want to sell you or that we want you to contribute to, right, it'll help you build trust in us. And if we understand your needs and we show you that we understand what your job is really about, right, that helps you trust us. And if we're very clear about what we're doing and what we can't do, and don't sell you vaporware and don't make promises that we can't keep, right, that allows us, I'm talking about OSP now, to create marketing materials for and with our clients that should work much, much, much better in the context of complex technical products. So the three components here, empathy comes from Greek roots, and it means to basically to in our case, and I'm cutting off another 20 minutes of talk that I give about the Greek origins of this word, but it allows us to put ourselves in someone else's shoes and figure out what they need, right? So we need to consider, what does our executive need? What do our investors need? What sort of pressure are they under? How can I help my team members? And so on, right? So we have to have empathy for their positions. We do investor marketing, and we do some other marketing activities, and we developed a thing that we call the empathy map. Basically, if you're talking to investors, the map would be from getting someone's attention to convincing them to give you money, right? But if we need help with our open source project, look at DDev, who are doing this. How do they get your attention? How do they get you interested? How do they help you trust that product and the community, and then actually get you so enthusiastic that you want to make a difference? Well, they're open sourcing a system agnostic, fantastic, container-based local development environment, right? And yes, it works with your system, and yes, it works with your CMS, right? And that's pretty cool. And it's, flexible and pluggable and extendable and so on. Oh, it's all on GitHub, and the support channels in Slack are very, very active. So it looks like you guys are really, really care about this. So maybe I can trust in that. And then, I see my colleagues are using it, and I spotted a bug, and it's worth fixing that, right? It's worth helping to make that project better because they seem to be doing the right thing all along the way. So they've built empathy with you, with their contributor community, to encourage this. So if we say, if here are some examples of things to say instead of that slide from the beginning, right? Oh, am I missing marketing guy? Darn it. Oh, there we are. Cool. Anyway, these are not now tied to the roles. They're just things that you need to think about saying to build understanding and collaboration and empathy in your team, right? What do you need from me to make this thing that we're doing a success, right? And how can we do this better the next time, right? And thank you. Don't forget to say thank you. That's probably the most powerful one, right? And frankly, as a marketer, you should never be afraid to ask, how does this thing work? And then, if somebody tells you something that you don't understand, ask them to explain that thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, until you actually understand it. It's a really nice trick. Being clear. If I'm talking with a business audience, if I am preparing investor marketing for serious investors, which I do, I'm going to talk a lot about market analysis, target audience and segmentation, getting the product strategy right, product market fit, personas, documenting the buyer's journey, and so on. Everybody in the room just stopped listening, except Mieszko. Right? I can't bring this to a meeting with you good people, right? But my serious investors, they need to hear this. But when we are talking about exactly the same material, about exactly the same product, if I say, are you solving a problem that people care about? You're like, oh, right? Like that feels a lot friendlier and a lot more relevant to what you do on a day-to-day basis. I hope. Who needs to know about what we're doing? Who else is solving the problem? And what is it that we're doing that's better? And this is simply learning how to frame statements, thoughts, thinking in an empathic way, being aware of who you're communicating with. There's a very nice TED Talk that talks about trust. That's a little bit parallel to this model that I've been showing you of empathy, clarity, and trust. Francis Fry talks about building and rebuilding trust involving showing empathy, showing logical rigor, right? Don't talk bullshit. Yeah? You have to be logical, right? And you have to be authentic. You have to be your true self. So if you're not talking crazy talk, and you seem to be genuinely yourself, and you have empathy for your audience, that's her formula for building trust. And I like it. I really like it. So, look, you remember the failure scenario that I told you about the awesome VC-funded product before? Right? What if instead, okay, we've built a great team and we've learned how to communicate with each other, everyone involved understands the need to prove the product concept early to justify further time and money investment from everyone, right? We build group consensus across our teams about what needs to be done. We ask everyone how to get to a goal to contribute. We're not top-down telling people what's going to happen. The executives go and find a customer willing to be a guinea pig and get early access to what could be a great product, but we don't know yet, but they understand that they're getting an alpha version of something, right? And then the devs define a minimum viable product that gives the client some value already, right? But it lacks polish. Maybe many of the features aren't ready for self-service. Maybe it's really intensely hands-on. Maybe security needs definition and like For now, only internal authorized teams can make some of the changes, but everybody is delivering value to the client and making it better. And that feedback loop is also making the product better faster, right? And everyone in the picture can be happy at every success milestone, right? And you're building a champion for the marketing team to talk with in public later, right? The client's happy because they get new value, and every time one bug gets fixed, that's like a huge victory. And the tech team contributes every day to making the product better later. The executive team wins a case study and a sales advocate, like I just said, and the investors see a product solving a real-world problem and solving real-world client needs, and that can help them believe in it and invest more money, right? And all that came from having empathy with each other's needs and learning how to communicate without blame, and so on. I really, really believe that these elements can help you all do better in your day-to-day work and build better products, better organizations, and, a better world. I know that sounds really cheesy, but I think these elements are very, very powerful and really important. And thank you so much for having me here today. Do I have time for questions? Yes, I have time for 2.5 questions. Yes. Let's get it on the microphone. Wait, so what do I think about Scrum meetings and about the system? Yeah, so out of manufacturing came Kanban and lean processes and so on, and through Toyota, and then the best aspects of that were adopted into Agile and Scrum methodologies, right? And I think that if you have a good team that knows how to communicate really, really well, Scrum is great. You have to know how to do it for your team. I've been on teams where it worked really well, and teams where we were using the wrong board, or we were doing planning poker instead of whatever, and there's a lot of personalities involved in it. You have to be good at people to do Scrum really well. The thing that fascinated me is when I saw that basically building on top of Lean to build Scrum and Agile, DevOps takes all of those concepts and builds on top of them as well. So Scrum is an essential part of the history of my thinking for today. So I think it can be great, and I think it can be important, and I think it's harder to do it if you're not working on a product, right? If you're on a fixed budget and a fixed deadline and so on, you can sort of do fake Scrum, but then, that can be a thing that makes it tougher, right? There's always challenges. I'll be here all day and tonight, so if something occurs to you later, Chandy, you want a drink?
So, as members of the Drupal community here,
I like that you formulate it as a user story.
Thanks. So yes, as members of the Drupal community here, what advice from considering empathy in our conversations and communications with one another do you suggest that we can all take from your talk to implement direct changes today or tomorrow in our teams locally? Sorry, tough question.
Everyone behind that issue queue comment is a person, right? And she just had a kid. He just had a divorce. She lost her job. He hasn't got much time, right? And it's really important to remember that we're humans, right? And we're fallible, and it's tough, and it's always tough, right? And when people drop the ball, right? When people screw up, it's not because they wanted to, right? I mean, if you see a malicious bad actor, that's a different thing, but right? If somebody screws up, if somebody makes a mistake, we have to find huge reserves of forgiveness, right? And huge amounts of patience. Most of us are volunteering, and, keeping jobs and doing things all at the same time. And lots of us have the luxury to be doing open source professionally, right? But that's really, really challenging. I think that the most important thing in Drupal land is to think about the aspects of blameless culture, and looking for systematic solutions, right? And systematic solutions, for example, volunteer burnout. That's a huge problem. That's a systematic problem, right? Or issue queue trolling. How do you deal with that with kindness, right? I think that the blameless culture could those principles could be most directly applied to a community like ours.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.